Hello, beautiful listeners. I am thrilled to be here. Last episode of the year. And we are talking about one of my most favorite things answering the question, what do you really want? Which is the core question behind visioning, behind being able to answer, where am I headed? Where are we headed? And for the sake of what? And I want to start by situating today's topic in the practice of leading with vision, orienting this exploration in time. And then we're going to get into, and then I'll lay out for you how I want to drop into this topic. So let me orient in time first. So to lead with vision means look back, go to the past. We must first feel a connection to where we're coming from. Feel that the story that we are telling, the stories we are telling, our narrative supports us in where we want to go. And we know if that's happening because we're not tripping over the way that we see ourselves. That's how we know, okay, where I'm coming from connects me to where I want to go, looking to my past. Then we want to look to the future. Like expand, go beyond the reality of the past, go beyond the reality of the present and answer like what is inspiring me to move forward? What's catalyzing me? What's catalyzing my team, the organization I lead to move ahead, perhaps in a new direction, perhaps in sustaining something that is great and exists now, but it will be different because it is in a new time orientation, looking out to the future. We know that what is will look different as it places itself in a new time and context. So, what is inspiring us as we look ahead to the future? And then finally, to lead with vision, we have to be able to, while holding the connection to the story, to the past, holding the inspiration, that sense of purpose in the future, we have to take aligned and inspired actions in the present. Because the only place that we actually move into vision is in this moment. And in this moment, it is a present centered act. But by being able to connect to the past and feel that inspiration from the future, it guides us into what does it look like, feel like, sense to be leading with vision in the present, to take the actions that connect us to that. Okay, so that's the time orientation. I just want to name, where am I coming from? Where am I going? Therefore, what am I doing now? Okay, so that's the setup. By the way, for those of you who've been listening to recent episodes, the episode that dropped on December 14th, looking at lessons learned this year and offering the tool of here's a letter that I can write at the end of the year. That's a way in a time bound annual practice to look back, to connect to that story. What's working, what's not working. So that's there for you. What we're going to do in today's episode is let go of the past, let go of how do I do this in the present, and really hold space for that future oriented possibility and inspiration. Get excited. It's super fun. So that's what we're going to do today. And because I know that for many of us to be able to do that, we want to be able to know, yeah, okay, that's great, but how? How will I do that? So if you are having that question surging within you, let me just assure you that next week's episode is really going to be looking at some of those questions of how as we think about starting 2023 off right. So that's coming. Okay, so let's now talk about how are we going to drop into this future-oriented possibility, answering the question, what do I really want for this coming year? Do you feel it? Heart opening? Can you get there with me? Maybe even noticing what's coming up for me as I'm holding that question. Notice that without judgment. Here's the movement we're going to make together in today's episode. I'm going to start by talking about how to and why you must cultivate the belief that what you want is possible. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to build and talk about how you hold the space to be in this exploration. And those two pieces are when I think about when I'm doing this work one on one or in a group setting, teaching a workshop. These are two things that I, as a coach and facilitator, am bringing into the space. I am cultivating the belief and holding it. I am creating the environment that allows for this exploration. And so, as we move through these first two components of today's episode, I want you to know I'm giving you like my best of so you can do this on your own. You could even do this with the people around you, your teams, your family. And I hope you do. Like, that's my wish. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at in the first two. Then we're going to shift and we're going to get into the practice of, okay, if I can hold the belief and I've created the space, let me now be in the exploration, answering the question, what do I really want? And we're going to do this in two ways. First, with some questions, some prompts, and I'm going to talk you through that, tapping into our own best thinking. What do we already see? What do we already sense is what we want? And then I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to offer this as we close out today's episode in a very short guided meditation. And I'll talk more about why I'm going to offer it in those two ways when we get into it. Okay, so let's go there. Let's start by talking about cultivating the belief. So, I close out every episode with my deeply held conviction: there is nothing stopping you. There is nothing stopping you. There is nothing stopping me. There is nothing stopping us. That is the belief that animates me in my life. And at some point along the way, I recognized that this is not a belief that is universally held. In fact, it is often rare to find. And so I'm out here in this podcast, in my work, holding this belief for others. And I believe that you can hold it for yourself. That said, it's not a Pollyanna-ish pie in the sky. Of course, anything that you want is possible. And so I want to orient this belief that what you want is possible within Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, quick tutorial. You move from the base up in Maslow's hierarchy, from the foundational needs that we all have, to the top of self-actualization. And I think that for many of us, when we hold vision, and I have to say for myself, like it feels like the juiciest, most delicious place to be visioning is really fulfilling your greatest potential, which I do believe is possible. I am self-actualized. The greatest part of me and what I want to bring out into the world is being brought out into the world. And as a team, the greatest part of what we want to offer into the world is being brought into the world. As an organization, the impact that we can have into the world, like how we want to change things for the sake of what are we here, is being brought out into the world. That is self-actualization. And sometimes to get there, we have to go to the foundation. And so I want to do just a quick, check in with yourself. How are you doing against these other pieces? The base of Maslow's hierarchy, physiological. In my work, because I'm working with organizations and professionals, physiological needs have not historically been something in my 10 years of being in this work, something that I'm focusing on. However, cue the pandemic of the last 2 years. And in the last 2 years, suddenly, but where do we work? What is the workplace? What does that look like? What is shelter in the work? Has been challenged. And so I do think professionally and on a human level, it's important to notice, do I have the food I need, the shelter I need, reproductive rights, right? This is the space of physiological needs. How am I doing there? Check in with yourself. You have to shore that up first. Then comes safety. And again, there's safety in terms of I'm not worried about violence. I'm not worried about here, me in the woods. I'm not worried about a bear breaking through my window and showing up in my bedroom. That has not happened. I'm not afraid of it. But if I was, imagine the different headspace I'd be in. Am I safe? And in our workplaces, there's also this thing called psychological safety. Do I feel safe to share a differing opinion? Is it okay to have conflict, productive conflict, shared in a professional manner? Is it safe to bring conflict into my workspace? Do I have psychological safety to share my point of view? Right? So, is safety there? And by the way, same thing in our homes. Am I safe in my family environment to share? Am I safe in my friend circle? Do I feel safe within my own understanding? Am I safe? Third rung of 5, love and belonging. We are social creatures. Do I feel that sense of connection, both to my family of origin, to my chosen family? And I think about that, yes, as our in our personal lives, our chosen family, and also in our work lives. The people, and I like to avoid talking about our work colleagues as family. They are still our chosen community of where we're choosing to show up and create this impact in our professional lives. Do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I have a voice? What about if I'm in a racial minority? What about if I have a disability? What about if I'm neurodivergent? What about if I'm not in the predominant gender? Do I feel like I belong? Fourth rung, the thing that sits beneath self-actualization, is esteem. And this breaks down primarily around self-respect and self-esteem. Self-respect, do I feel like I and my ideas are valued? Self-esteem, do I have the confidence that they will continue to be valued and continue to grow in what's possible? Does my ego feel taken care of? Esteem. And then self-actualization. And this is often the space of we're learning new things, new skills, new roles, new creative ventures. I'm growing fully into the greatest expression of what's possible because my physiological needs are met, because I feel safe, because I feel loved, because I feel a deep sense of self-esteem, self-respect, and therefore can grow into this greater peace. This is how we cultivate the belief. I hold the belief that there is nothing stopping you. And being able to check in and say, where is my attention needed? Am I in a space of shoring up the foundation? Am I able to step into self-actualization? And I am simultaneously holding that more is possible, that you can go beyond, that you can sit in this expansive, beautiful, delicious space of self-actualization, and that you can still lead with vision and shore up your physiological needs and shore up whatever part of your space of the foundation needs attention. Okay, let's talk about holding the space. So, I want to say you are here, you're listening to a podcast on the topic of what do I really want in this next year that's coming? And if this is the only thing that you do around casting a vision for the coming year, it is enough. There is this thing that happens when we talk about creating the space to imagine what we want, where our perfectionist tendencies flare up, they kick into full gear. And it manifests in what I often hear is like, but I need more time. But I wanted to have at least 2 hours. I wanted to have at least a day. I wanted to be in a beautiful setting. I wanted to go on retreat to do it. And I'm here to say, can you continue to do it in different ways? Yes, we'll talk about that, but this is enough. Just simply saying, I'm doing it now And that's enough. That's the first thing about holding the space, that it can be imperfect and that in fact done. Doing it, being in the practice of it is vastly more important than any kind of perfection. So you're here and it's enough. You are already holding the space. We are holding the space together. And yes, you can go deeper. So we're going to move in a moment where I offer you some questions. I share this short guided meditation. And so some of the things you can think about in terms of holding the space, you might ask yourself, where would I like to do this? I know for myself, I like to do things early in the morning when I know that it's unlikely that any of my family members will be awake. That, and as a mom of 3 children, young kids, that just gives me a sense of I can really focus in on myself. And I'm an early riser. I could imagine if I were a night owl, the reverse would be true. Would want to do it after everyone's asleep. Again, unlikely to be interrupted. So where do you want to do it? I like to do my reflections indoors, usually. Something about the enclosure allows me to feel like I can expand. Of course, I live in a rural location. I love being in nature. And so for some people, being outdoors might feel like the place you want to do this. I like to go outdoors to inspire me. But when I'm in the act, I notice for myself, I like to be indoors. Again, it's not better or worse, but check in. Where feels good to me to be in this reflection of what do I really want? The second thing I want you to consider around holding the space is how long. So I know where I'm going to do it. I've answered that. How much time to give. And this, I have a very strong point of view, which is 10 minutes. That's how much time I want you to give yourself. 10 minutes, time box it. Once you get through 10 minutes, so 10 minutes, let's say, to answer the reflection questions, great. Then you might say, wait, I'd like to give myself 10 minutes more. Feel free, add 10 more minutes. You want to give yourself 10 minutes after that? Add 10 minutes. But by time boxing it, especially when you were first setting out to do this, we really start to expand things. We really start to, the constraint of time forces us to discard all of our resistance, or at least most of it. And that's a really good condition for being able to step into this work. We're no longer wondering, is it enough? Is it perfect? Am I in the right spot? It's like, this is my 10 minutes, go. So I like that. So determine what conditions are going to feel good to you, and then give yourself 10 minutes. Finally, I want you to think about supports. Maybe you're a person, you're like, I really need a coach. Maybe you want a therapist. There's some healing I need to do. Versus a coach, there's some growth I'm wanting to set, a new intention around. Great. Maybe you want to have your partner in on it because the vision you're calling in is really something related to your partnership or something you're creating as a couple. Great. So really think about what is going to support you, who is going to support you, and invite that in too. You never have to be in this work alone. Call in the supports, whether it is other podcasts, books, team members, friends, coaches, right? Whatever it is, call it in. What's going to support me? Who's going to support me? All right, let's get to some questions, shall we? We shall. So I'm going to take you through 3 core buckets of questions. And for those of you who've been tracking with the process that I use in visioning, and there's 5 access points, we're really centering in here on getting clear. What is it that you already see? And the cool thing about this is that what you already see is vast. I can tell you that when I'm facilitating to groups of 80 people at a time, 100 people at a time, one-on-one, the thing that is consistent is that, and this is particularly true in groups where you get this feeling of like, can we do it? But even one-on-one, people are like, I know I'm stepping into this process and I'm going to be in this visioning with you, with a member of your team. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get where we got. So there's this sense of like, I don't know, can I do it? And what is consistent is yes, you can. And not with going into the unconscious and uncovering things you never knew were possible, just literally holding the space and asking yourself, what do I already know to be true? And this is the process of getting clear. And I think of this as a more linear way of thinking. We're tapping into what we already know. So if we can release the perfectionist tendencies, the worries of, do I have enough time, all of that, and we just literally answer the questions, I'm telling you, answers will emerge. So here are the questions. These will be in the show notes so you can come to them wherever you're listening to this. There'll be a link to the show notes so you can access this if you want to come back. And as I said, this space of this podcast is enough. So let these questions wash over you, see what shows up. First bucket of questions is really to get clear on what kind of a vision are we talking about. This is the one necessary first step. After this, visioning is like the wild the wild west. You can go so many different directions. And I love that about visioning. I always say, though, the first thing you have to do is name, what kind of a vision am I creating? Is this a vision of my whole life? Is this a vision of my career? Is it a vision of my role? Is it a vision of a work transition? Is it a vision of myself? And notice what's different about a vision of my whole life versus a vision of me, myself. Is it a vision of family, of home, of relationship, of transition, right? The list goes on. This is one of the places that I find I spend, um, is like a really key part of the one-on-one work that I do, because really helping crystallize what is the piece that matters here. And I say that because if you're feeling stuck on being able to answer it, two strategies. One, phone a friend. Like, come up with your own best thinking and then bounce it off someone. Is this the kind of vision? Like, does this feel right to you? If I'm answering this, does that feel like this is the key vision I'm calling in right now? And the other strategy beyond phoning a friend is just go with the thing that emerges first and know that that's good enough. Back to like, let's not overthink it. You can always come back and revise. Can you hold multiple visions at once? Can you hold a vision for my professional life and a vision for home? Yes. And you want to know, what is the primary thing I'm bringing my attention to in this moment? Can you always pivot? Of course you can. But where is your attention primarily being focused? I want you to be clear on that. So what kind of a vision? And once you've answered what kind of a vision, then I want you to answer, what's the time horizon for this vision? Now, for the sake of what we're doing today, call it 2023. Here we are. It's a perfect time of year. Looking out 1 year, what are you wanting to call in? And if you're feeling like, "Ooh, what kind of a vision? Sharon said all these visions and I don't know which one." Call it a vision of whole life or a vision of self. Those are the most broad and encompassing in different ways. And again, trust your intuition, trust your gut. Go with what feels right for you. Okay. What kind of a vision? What time horizon? Now, we're talking right now about the end of about a year. I then want you to pick a vision date. And I want to say this in this context, when the time horizon might be 3 to 5 years, and I'm saying pick a vision date, you really have to hone it in the course of, even when we're looking at an annual 2023, you might say, oh my gosh, but to call it December 31st feels very loaded because it's New Year's Eve. There's expectations on what I'm doing, or maybe that feels great to you. Or maybe you're like, you know what, it would feel better if it were like a random Friday. January 6th of 2024 feels better to me than December 31st, 2023, as I think about the date. So like really crystallize it. What's the date? And then I like to go further. I look at the calendar. What day of the week is that? So like, get clear. What's the date? What type of vision? Okay, so that's the first thing I'd want you to do. Second bucket of 3. Again, tapping into what is your own current best knowledge and awareness. I want you to think about, What changes you want to call in 2023? And maybe this is something that you want to release, something that you want to let go of. Maybe it's because it's something that has really been restraining you or holding you back. Maybe it's because you know what you're calling in is going to ask you to let go of something. You need to carve out new space. So even though you love this thing, you need to carve out the space. And this is a place that you can cut this out, create space for something new. Maybe it's not about releasing something. Maybe the change that you want to call in is about an adaptation. This has existed in this way. And in 2023, I want it to be reimagined. I still want it there, but I want to see a revision. I want to see it look different, feel different. Great. What's the adaptation? And finally, maybe it's something you're not looking to let go of. You're not looking to adapt. You want to expand. You want to amplify it. Maybe the change you're wanting to call in is something about taking what's there and bringing it out. Beautiful. What are those things? What is that thing? What changes do you want to call in 2023? That's what I want you to think about in this second bucket of questions. So we know what kind of a vision and the time horizon. We're looking at the changes right now specific to 2023. And finally, I want you to get into here comes the visioning questions. What's your own best thinking around what do you really want in 2023? Imagine for a moment that you and I are high-fiving. It's the end of the year. We're about to toast with whatever feels good for us to toast with, heading into 2024. What are we cheersing? What are we high-fiving about? What is bringing a smile to our faces that, like, can you believe this happened? What do you really want? And set aside the stories, set aside what things have existed. It might be something totally different, and it might be something totally the same. Don't judge it. But notice, what do you really want in 2023? What does wild success look like for you next year? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? Bring in the fullness of your senses. What is the shape of wild success for you in 2023? And if you're like, "Whoa, I don't know, I can't see it," or I see kind of outlines, but I can't see the details, take a breath and look closer. Pay attention to the details. Pay attention to the textures, almost like you are holding up a magnifying glass and looking closer. Or perhaps you're putting your vision under a microscope and then turning it, like bringing it into focus. Okay, like what do you see? Maybe it's not a microscope. Maybe it's a telescope and you're casting out. Notice how that feels different. Looking up and out instead of down, you're looking up and out. Again, focusing in. What do you see? What are those details? Okay, that is the last bucket of the questions I wanted to offer. As promised, I want to shift gears for a moment. And the same kind of questions are going to be there, but I want to offer this to you as a way to come back into a meditation and to take this in that way. So I'm going to guide us through a short meditation, and I'll timestamp this in the show notes in case you want to come back and listen to just this piece. So go ahead and take a breath in. And when you're ready, let it out. Breathing in possibility, letting out any resistance to it. And I want you to notice, imagine yourself, and it's the end of 2023, and it is just as you wished it to be. Ah, it's there, it's happening. I want you to look around and notice what's the context you're feeling your way into, you're sensing yourself in, perhaps even seeing yourself in. Are we seeing you in a boardroom? Are we seeing you at home, on a beach, some other location? Notice as you close out 2023 and it is just as you wish it to be, where are you? What do you look like? Yes, maybe the clothes you're wearing, maybe if there's any physical changes you can detect. But I also want you to look at your eyes, look at your mouth. What's the facial expression or expressions showing up? Just notice that, appreciate it. And again, as you breathe in, I want you to feel your way in to what has brought you delight this year, what has lit you up and just made you feel like, I can't believe this is my life. It's happening. And maybe as you take one more breath in, you ask yourself here, delighted at the end of 2023, what has helped me get here? What do I want to remember? And is there any advice I want to offer my present day self? Beautiful. And take one more breath in. And when you're ready, let it out. And as you close out this meditation, if you feel inspired that you want to write down or draw out anything that's emerged, do that. Give yourself 2 minutes, sketch it out, capture what's important to know, and trust that it's enough. Okay, dear listeners, that is what I wanted to share with you in today's episode. I appreciate you being here. I can't wait to see what you dream up for yourself. Please know that it is my deep wish that what you are hearing today is inspiring you, the teams you lead, your loved ones, to find your way in, to be able to lead with intention, to lead with vision. That is my deep, deep wish. If you want to share with me what emerged, please know I would love, love, love to hear it. You can reach out and contact me over at pointroadstudios.com. Catch me on Instagram, LinkedIn. And until next time, please know that yes, I am cultivating the belief, holding my deeply held conviction that there is nothing stopping you. So go ahead and get after whatever it is that you really want.